That was amazing. Thank you so much, Philip. And that was a wonderful film showcasing you all. Just to remind you, just very briefly, I said that ANGOKA was part of the first cohort. So who is ANGOKA? We're an IT security company headquartered actually in Belfast. We're Northern Irish incorporated. And our mission is actually the safety and resiliency of smart cities and smart mobility. So what do? We provide cybersecurity solutions, and we're protecting the communication of connected devices. So since we've left that cohort and we've participated in some other prominent accelerators, we are proudly announcing that today actually that we've struck a partnership with StreetDrone as a cyber security partner. We have sold a few units to a prominent British-based telecoms provider. And we have recently won 3 major innovation contracts in aviation. But as we all know, the journey of from testing to scaling is really hard. And we herewith want to introduce the panel. Jay, we've already seen a minute ago. Please wave. Mohamed from Konnect. Theo kindly of Plug and Play flew in this morning from Stuttgart. We have Doug Jenkins from AXA as a representative of the corporate partners. There's not just AXA, but there are other corporate partners. You have seen the wonderful names on the slides earlier. And of course, representing the Testbeds here is James. Fantastic. I've already said keep it very snappy. We have lots of questions and we must finish at 4 o'clock. So, going on to Mohamed, and then Jay, you can add and pitch in as well. So what were the expectations of going into the program, and have they been fulfilled?
Yeah, so for us, the expectations were to have the capability to work within a live environment, and that was met entirely, particularly with what we did at Smart Mobility Living Lab. The network and the infrastructure that they already had set up really helped us to get that live access.
You also talked earlier on about the ability that it has accelerated massively your journey. What do you think it has really brought in terms of that benefit to you?
Absolutely. So for us, we focus primarily on the software analytics. And so what it helped to accelerate for us is that we didn't have to worry about putting up the hardware in the city council setting. It was already there as part of the testbed and the program. And so that accelerated perhaps 6 months for us in terms of being able to get that accessibility.
That's absolutely amazing. How about you, Jay?
Yeah, exactly the same. I think that the expectation was that we would be able to come onto the test beds and shorten our R&D cycles down considerably because of the grant funding, but also because of the access that we had to these wonderful test beds. Much like Mo, I think our R&D cycle shortened from just over 12 months to less than 2 months for us to go and deliver some really acute IP and prove what we were trying, what we believed in, for the last 2 years. So that's really, I think that was really valuable for us from CAM ScaleUp.
Absolutely amazing. Now, James, Testbeds, just a passive provider of infrastructure or so much more? So can you just sort of highlight for us a little bit about what's happened that you've seen across the various companies, second cohort just gone through, and also how is that knowledge being harvested and then disseminated again? So how does it accelerate also the learning of startups that come into the program?
Absolutely. So we had the privilege of working as Smart Mobility Living Lab with all 6 SMEs this year, but actually I was delighted that all 6 SMEs worked across other testbeds as well as part of the CAM testbed ecosystem. So it was that bringing together of expertise from the controlled road environments coming through to semi-controlled and then out in the Wild West in public road environments. And really, the benefit of working with those groups is that they're so technologically savvy and entrepreneurial. Actually, it makes all the testbeds really, really stand to attention. Make sure that we're always evolving what we're doing. You mentioned around that knowledge transfer and what we did differently between the 2 cohorts. And I think actually one of the key elements to make sure in what's a relatively compressed time frame really, how do we make sure that those organisations can get going quickly? It's both the interconnectedness within CAM Testbed UK, meaning that we can work between Peter over there at UTAC, for example, coming through to SMLL, mean that we can hand over quite seamlessly between the two sites, that we can understand the test plans that are required to make sure we've got the biggest bang for the buck. And I think as we go through, the more of these cohorts that come through, that becomes particularly critical. And the final thing I'd say is actually from an exposure perspective, we have a number of different organisations, certainly within the Smart Mobility Living Lab. We have an innovation community where there's a mix of different SMEs, different corporates. Exeros have actually just joined that community. But the visibility of the SMEs to that wide group is really, really interesting, where they're looking across the mobility ecosystem. And so I think it's that joint learning that comes through that's so critical and so valuable from this programme. I really do think it's got such strength.
And how do you then condense that and sort of transfer that to the next cohort?
So for us, it's about making sure that we understand things like the use cases, where when we've looked in the first cohort where we had Exeros Technologies, for example, and where we've had Albora in the most recent cohort, both looking at different GNSS applications. Not precisely the same thing, but it's about understanding the different use cases, the environments where that brings most benefit, such that when we engage with the different SMEs, it's about saying, in this condensed period with this type of funding, yes, to get the most benefit, you can really focus your efforts in these areas so that we can really progress at the pace that's required.
That sounds amazing. Doug, why does an insurance company, I mean, we all know that AXA is pretty innovative in that sense and very engaged in the space, but why really get involved, and how do you get involved, and how have you been involved in this cohort as an example so far?
Yeah, probably everyone will think, as an insurer, we get involved just because there's a premium income. I know probably if we had a show of hands, everyone would put their hands up to love to pay an insurance premium. We all like to do that, don't we? But historically, since Road Traffic Act cover started in 1930, we've got millions of lines of data, which gives us a really good insight into the standard fleet. So car, vans, trucks, and anything like that, we've got lots of information to give to the underwriters to give them some comfort, not an awful lot most of the time, but a lot of comfort in what they're writing to come up with a premium for that risk, depending on what it is. Now, every trialling organisation for autonomy, driverless, whatever, a small but significant part of the safety case is to have appropriate insurance. So for an underwriter to feel comfortable in providing that insurance, what would be ideal is if we had some historical information, and we haven't got that, obviously. We currently do insure some trialling organisations, but the part we play in this is to be as close as we can to what's being innovated in the test beds. So all the people involved in what will be the intricate parts to the whole big picture, if the more we can understand that, the more we can talk to the underwriters, or I can talk to the underwriters and give them that comfort. I think reversing that role as well, getting insurance for a trial is not that easy. We work through a broker network. There's lots of insurers, lots of brokers. If you approach a broker that doesn't understand what you're doing, that might be a bit of a challenge. So the more we know about the trial, the more confidence we've got of providing the right level of insurance and cover, if you like, for that trial. So the closer we are and the more we can get hands-on and understand what's actually happening, the more chance you've actually got of getting insurance. So it's so important. We've been involved in trials not just as an insurer, but as a corporate partner since 2014 in lots of different trials. And it's so important for us to understand where that's going. The conversations you have around it, it isn't just like picking up the phone to a meerkat and putting your pod in and saying, yeah, after that, there's a lot more to it. We need to understand that. And I think you said it was 7 times we talked about communicating properly and everything, understanding that. The more open we are and the more we understand what risk we are actually covering, the better. So that's how important it is to work with everybody on all the different projects that's going on.
So basically, there is a lot of data sharing back from the testbeds with your organization. So that how does the knowledge flow
I'd
look
like to see
into
more.
AXA?
We'd like to see more. You know, you said that word, data sharing. Yeah, with manufacturers as well, and yeah, that's a bit of a challenge, but we'll get there.
So what insights have you gained from this cohort as an organization?
I think if you just look at the concept, so there's a vehicle, we know what's going on historically, like I say, we've known what's gone on for years. We ensure the times when us as people driving, we make mistakes in the main. If we're going to take that person out, or partly out and then fully out, whatever takes over from that person, we need to understand it and be comfortable with it. And so from all of the people we've been involved in, we get such a close-up insight into how that works, and we get the opportunity to ask those questions and understand it. So it's not just a case, well, this is what we do, we've got mapping. You know, lots of people have mapping, but what use of it is it to us? Mm-hmm. You know, how can we recreate that instance so that we can make things better still? So there's quite a lot. You know, the film didn't really show a lot of what excellent work everybody's doing. So yeah, the data is important, the situation, the scenario. We need to understand what we're insuring. The head of motor at AXA always says to the underwriters, you need to understand what the risk is. So that's what we're trying to do.
I'll come back to that one. Maybe there's a revenue opportunity for our startups, definitely. Plug and play. What role have you been playing so far, and what would you actually love to see going forward as a role? What could you contribute or want to contribute?
Sure. So Plug and Play has been partnering up with Menzky for both of the cohorts. So we've been supporting with the shape of the program, with running the program, managing the program, but also we've been supporting the SMEs and the startups that have been part of these two programs. It's worth mentioning that both Menzky and Plug and Play have the same goals, so we share the same mission. We want to bring life to disruptive innovation. We want to accelerate ambitious startups in the mobility space. And at Plug and Play, actually, innovation in the mobility space has been a priority ever since 2016. And over the past few years, we've built more than a handful of acceleration programs across the world. So we're present in very many locations with mobility and smart city focus. And we've accelerated, I think, more than 750 startups over the past few years. So we understand, I think, the mobility industry. We are close to OEMs such as Mercedes-Benz or Porsche. We partner up with top tiers automotive suppliers such as Bosch, ZF, or Motherson, who are working with us, for instance, in Stuttgart in Germany. And we've come to understand the pace of change that the industry is facing, and also the key challenges and bottlenecks that these big corporations have to find a way through in order to remain competitive in the market. In terms of our role in the program, so we've been drawing from our experience with these mobility and smart cities programs, and we've helped also in the selection and identification of SMEs early on in the process. But then we've been providing continuous support and engagement to the SMEs that have gone through the program. We've exposed them to the global innovation ecosystem that we have at Plug and Play. We've made introductions to the relevant automotive players. We've invited them to our networking events, to our demo days, to our roundtables. We gave them a space, and we gave them visibility so that they could share the solutions with different relevant players. Also, some of you might know that Plug and Play has an in-house VC firm, and also for the SMEs who are looking for funds, we've provided them with guidance, but also we've got more than involved with some of the SMEs as part of this program. I can't share more details today, but we've been working on something pretty exciting, and I think this demonstrates that the CAM ScaleUp program plays a really important role when it comes to connecting UK-based startups with international investors. So I would say the two takeaways would be we've provided them with the right introductions and with the right space to share their solutions with relevant automotive players, and then also with investment opportunities by connecting them with different VCs or with our own in-house
So
VC.
is actually being part of the Zenzik program an accelerator into startup Autobahn, or do you have to go through all the hoops again to be accepted, or can you broker proper participation there?
So at Startup Autobahn, we do have one rule that we do not want to bend. All the startups that are part of our programs have a commitment from one of the corporate partners to work together on a pilot project or on a POC. Of course, we're inviting the SMEs who are part of the Zenzik program to attend our demo days, but in order for them to be part of our Startup Autobahn program, they would have to also have a pilot project or a POC with one of these corporate partners that we work with at Startup Autobahn. But we do provide them with some other exposure to other mobility programs. So I think when thinking about the first cohort of the Zenzik program, a lot of the finalists were also accepted into the mobility program in California, in Silicon Valley. So that is definitely possible.
Great, fantastic. That's a nice transition into, what comes after R&D. And it's all about money, isn't it? So, and the best money comes from clients. There's also, of course, the wonderful aspect of getting investment that's important to scale, but validation that someone is actually putting, whether that is for proof of value or proper pilot, money on the table to see your technology work, and then taking it possibly into small-scale contracts and so forth is the most important thing. So now, actually, the question, maybe you kick off, Jay. Yes. What are those challenges to get to that next step?
I think I speak on behalf of most of the SMEs that were engaged in the program was that, inevitably everybody's looking for funding, right? You have some real innovation and you like to showcase that innovation to corporate partners, but also to investors, and ideally get investment at the end of it. And I think that the benefit of coming on the CAM ScaleUp program is that you get to enhance your R&D effort, you get to go and prove your concept, and then you go and get to take that back to the corporate partners, also the investors at the end of it. And in effect, it validates what you've been doing. You're working alongside big organizations like the OEMs, big tier ones, and that also adds clout to us as an SME. Yes. Going out there, I think. Mm-hmm. So I think, overall, it's definitely a very powerful position. For us personally, it was, I think I mentioned it in the video, it was probably the most valuable accelerator for organizations involved in the CAM community here in the UK.
What other support would be really amazing for you right now for where you both are?
Yeah, I can just attest to that in terms of the opportunities to use the CAM ScaleUp program to demonstrate to the clients, which helps get the funding. I would say that a lot of support in the way of working towards investment as well is another key element, which has been fantastic in the CAM ScaleUp program. I would say as a follow-on, really, the program needs to be longer. It's just been so much happening that for us, there's just so many opportunities that can be brought out of it that you just don't want it to end. So it's I think going from there and then to further introductions to for us, we're looking to work with city councils, and we are working with some of them, and also with traffic surveyors, and so getting those introductions as the next step as well is going to be key.
How many proof of values or pilots, that next step, do you think you still need to have with your client base to to then say, okay, we have a product we are ready to commercialize in a very consistent manner. Because I'm always interested in that piece of, yes, we've proven something, we've validated something, and yes, we are not just part of the innovation circus, okay, we've done this program, but now we need to get to those corporates and then to have that adoption that someone is willing to pay money for a certain period of time, and then with the view of getting a contract, that's another stage. What do you think?
Very, very good question. I think prior to the program, if you look at 100% being commercial partnership, viable product that's out there selling. I think our concept, we were around 20% of our journey there. I think with what we've done on the CAM ScaleUp Programme, we're sitting more like 70-80% of our journey there to having a commercialised product. As a result of the programme, we've probably had about 5 or 6 serious commercial conversations with big partners. One of them's in this room today. And it's enabled us to take things a lot further, is to engage with those corporate partners, to work together to gain their insight into the future of those products so we can tune them and then release our final version product. I think again, really valuable.
Yeah, just to add to that, we're in a space where our solutions are B2B or B2G, with government entities. And so the scale in terms of demonstrating this, you probably only need 2 to 3 key corporate partners in the beginning, in the very early stages of the company. Get that right, and then it can really scale to everyone else.
Fascinating. That's super accomplishment. Now going back.
Well, I was asked today, funny enough, whether I had the AXA checkbook with me, but I haven't. No.
It's so big you couldn't even carry it in.
I don't think there's many checks left in it.
That's a shame. So, but how could you, or on behalf of also the other corporates, how can you help truly with commercialization?
Well, interestingly, one of the second cohort that's here today, I don't know whether I can mention them. Extract, can I? No? Okay. Anyway, we've known them for quite some time. And in their earlier life, they were doing a certain thing which really improved our claim service to the insurer. Because of the involvement in the CAM innovation setup, they've gone on to develop their product a lot more, which is a lot more useful to us. So that's just an example of, without it, would they have got to that stage? I don't know. But now they've got contracts with AXA in various countries and so on. There are some things that we will invest in because it's useful to the insurance model to make things more efficient, claims being one of them, because it's historically very inefficient, and data and information in that sense. But there are some things that, whilst we might not invest in directly, we will use indirectly. There are some things, services, risk management, that we don't buy, but we facilitate and provide markets for them. So, and it's deciding where that sits in the scale of things.
Amazing. James, I have another one on the Testbeds. Business model of Testbeds. This program has heavily subsidized, of course, the usage of the Testbeds, which is, superb. So going forward into the future, if everyone wants to come back, I asked you earlier whether you give us a rebate, but I'm not sure you can answer that question on behalf of all the other Testbeds. But truly, what is the business model that the Testbeds can actually, put into place that SMEs that not necessarily all get accepted into the wonderful Zenzik program, have access to that capability? Yeah. What do we need to do to enable that? And for all of us to come back constantly.
Sure. So we touched on it earlier, actually. Part of that's around that iteration. So we know that when a lot of the validation activities come through, and particularly when we're looking at different versions of software, capabilities and enhancements within the solution, it's that repeatability, showing that progression over time. So when we're working with examples from the first cohort coming forward again, that repeat testing, it's about efficiency saving. So once we start to understand examples of the testing, examples of the integration, for example, how do we start to bring that through in a way that means that we can do that in the most effective way? So we're a commercial organisation, and we sit down and work with other members of the testbed community. I can't quite see anything because it's so bright, but I can see at least Peter's over there on the end from UTAC. And it's about coming together with those joined up propositions so that we can take different SMEs, whether they're part of the cohorts or whether they're outside of that, through to say, look, this is the most effective way of you doing that testing. We've done something similar to this before. How does that sound? And if it's not quite right, we can adjust it. That's fine. We've got that flexibility. And in fact, what we've seen repeatedly with different SMEs coming forward is that what starts off as a great battle plan on paper gets tweaked within the first 24 hours, and then we take a slightly different path. And that's fine. That's R&D, that's early stage R&D. But as we take that validation forward, go for different investment rounds and so on, it's about making sure that iteration can be done in the most effective and efficient way.
Super, and we have just been asked to be more effective and efficient. We need to close 5 more minutes earlier. So let's talk about truly the future, the greater good. Earlier on, Claren said, this is about smarter, safer, greener, fairer, more sustainable, more resilient, and that is the word, the world that we are hoping to enable. That is absolutely fantastic. So how do we as ecosystem, what do we think we have to do to come together to make that happen? How does Doug said earlier on that collaboration over data and data sharing is an issue. We know all of that, but some views from maybe also the SMEs here. How do we think we can bring things together to accelerate that learning to get to that stage?
Yeah, so I'll add to that to begin with. If the past century was defined by growth, I would say this century is going to be defined by sustainability, and we are all working towards making our systems as efficient as they can be so that we can maximize the use of the resources that we have at our disposal. And so for us, I think is having that shift in that mindset. Everything we've seen in terms of what everyone here has seen in the videos earlier is that we are working towards that direction and trying to shift the landscape to make it as efficient as it can be in connected and an autonomous future.
Yeah, I think landscape's quite an interesting one. We have big corporates, real innovation taking place there. If we look at the connected autonomous vehicle landscape right now, we can probably say that CAVs are 85% effective in terms of true self-driving. And that extra 15% or 10% is the real challenge of where we are today. I think that everybody's focused on this, from your large corporates to also your SMEs, and it might be the large corporates are looking after, say, 5% improvement in that statistic. But actually, some of the SMEs are looking at 0.1% or 1%. But the combination of those elements help us overall as a collective get to 95%, 98%, and ideally 99% if it's possible. So I think, the collaboration of SMEs to corporates all working together, focusing on the challenge ahead, is quite a good challenge to have. And I think, programs like this really help infuse those interests.
You must have incredible visibility of what's happening because you are having to ensure it all, right? Or someone is crunching the data. So that visibility of what's happening and what's coming down the pipeline and the requests you have, how does that get fed back into a circular system?
It's an interesting one. I was just listening to the guys there, and AXA's obviously a rather large entity, and we have different focuses on different things. There's lots, even if whatever you pay your premium for and insure something, if it hasn't got AXA on the label, it's probably inside or something. It's just that way, and we'll have climate sort of projects. We'll have environmental projects and so on. And sometimes, and I would encourage you to just open those blinkers a little bit to just what you're doing. Sometimes they're almost siloed because environmental is important, we're doing that. With this project, it's amazing how many of those lines of business it actually touches. Mm-hmm. So environmental, climate, travel, mobility. You know, it's not just motor anymore, or property and liability and motor typically. And it touches all of those in different ways. And we are having groups of people saying, oh, right, I've never realised that, touch that bit there. And we, you know, so what we've got today probably won't look anything like, well, even 5 or 10 years, even less than that. So yeah, the visibility is so important, and just that open and transparency of what everyone's doing.
Do you any amazing recommendation for these super startups of this cohort, but also the alumni and everyone going forward, how to make use of the plug-and-play ecosystem the best?
No, so I think all the SMEs that we interacted with, they were all super enthusiastic. They were really eager to participate in this program and into the other plug-and-play opportunities that we offered. So I would say it's very important to keep this passion and enthusiasm alive. It's important also to work hard. We know it's difficult to juggle so many programs and projects at the same time. Perhaps you're also raising some funds, so it's really hard sometimes to pay full attention to all these different projects that you're working on. But nonetheless, I would say keep getting in touch with us even after the program ends. Keep asking us about events, about networking opportunities. We would love, of course, to have you present at our events even after the program is finished. So keep your enthusiasm, and yeah, we would love to hear back from you also after the program. I think those are the key points.
Any final comments from Jay and Mohamed on advice for the next cohort?
Yeah, I would say get the planning in very early for the program, because it happens so quickly, and be open to flexibility within the program, even when it starts, because that is something that happened with us. We had a very early on workshop with one of the test beds, and that influenced the structure that we would create for the other test bed, just from the learnings that we took. So be open to that flexibility.
I completely agree with that. I think it's really important to absolutely plan as much as you can. The only advice I would give is try and plan 3 stages extra in terms of what you can derive from the time on the test beds, because you'll get to the end of week 1 and go, wow, we've got loads of data, but we could do with more. So yeah, try and plan ahead a bit better. Try and be a bit more ambitious in terms of what you want to gain from the program and the R&D spend that's taking place.
We don't have Philip anymore on the panel, but I know from the Zenzik team that, of course, that resonates hugely. And I think from the test, but it's all about that knowledge sharing. So I think we need to rope in the alumni very massively in terms of for the next cohort, but also being part of that ecosystem and still wanting to benefit from access to corporates, investment and so forth, but then also that sharing and that new knowledge that is being generated by not just these cohorts, but also the ecosystem of other accelerators that are out there.
Just one thing as well. Research the corporate partners.
Yes.
Understand what they do and challenge them. And ask those awkward questions. You know, don't just wait for us to ask you and you haven't got an answer or anything. Not that these guys did, by the way, but you know, really do your homework with the corporate partners and challenge them and ask them, because we can always say no, but if you never ask, you never know.
Absolutely. I think I would also say there are probably some pieces of advice that we could all put together in terms of ask to corporates, to the ecosystem out there. And I think Zenzik can provide a voice, because we don't, we want to build those bridges that stuff accelerates. So I think just to be absolutely sure, we allow Jeremy on stage now. I just wanted to say a massive thanks, not only for Theo to come and fly in extra for us. Doug, that's been amazing. Congratulations to completing the Zenzik program. James, I think you've been a very enthusiastic panel partner here. So Zenzig, I think on behalf of all of us in the ecosystem, thank you for doing it. I hope I hear some whispering that there's possibly positive news for the next 3 years. Thank you to all the Zenzig people. They have been amazing. And without you, we wouldn't have been able to accelerate those timelines. And I wish you all the best, lots of success. I hope we meet and that we can establish some, forums and meetings and stuff now that we can physically meet again to share, and that we have a few success stories that we can read about. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you.